To enter into Pinewood Derby, so this will be a refresher for boys who have run the race before, and probably more importantly, boys who have never run a Pinewood Derby race before. So, first of all, the council race is going to be March 11th. We will have Lions in there, and our district, Santa Cruz district race, will be February 25th. It looks like our race for Pack 357 will be the 11th of February. Right now on the calendar it's the 4th, but I believe we're moving it to the 11th. What we need to look at most importantly is the rules. Make sure we build legal cars. Now these are the 2016 rules. I don't expect them to change much for 2017. All of my time through scouting, the rules have basically been the same. So let's get down to the nitty-gritty of it. Most important part is you must use a derby kit from a BSA store, either the 17006, the 1790, or this other guy here. Our pack is going to give you the 006. That's just a little box kit. There's also a very similar one, the 900, which is the same kit but in a Christmas wrap type box. And then the 614 417 is a pre-cut wedge. So this is the one and only pre-cut car that's allowed in these races. If you go to Michael's, you go to Hobby Lobby, any of the craft or hobby shops, you'll find that Revell, that makes plastic models, also has a line of Pinewood Derby cars and accessories. While they have a hologram that says they're BSA licensed, they are not legal for any of our races. So anything outside of purchasing from a scout shop or what our pack gives to you is not legal for the race. Just keep that in mind. You see some stuff out in stores, those aren't legal. So let's take a quick peek at what a legal car looks like. So here's the pre-cut wedge. You can get this at our local scout shop or scoutingstuff.org if you don't want to cut it all. It doesn't come with the axles or the wheels, but you can pick those up in another kit. And here's what you'll be getting from our pack, the 006 car. It comes with the block of wood. Come on, Adobe. There we go. We're kind of outside of my window. It comes with the block of wood, 4 wheels, 4 nails. My advice to you is when you open the box, put the nails and the wheels in a Ziploc bag, because those nails have a tendency just to disappear. And your only way to get a legal nail is to buy a box of wheels or a tube of wheels. It's only $2 or $3, but it's a trip up into the scout shop that you don't really need. So let's get back to our rules. So you got to use a BSA kit. Easy enough. Now here's where we get a little vague. Oops. Let's get to the highlighter. There we go. It says the inspectors will check for modified wheels, speed axles, and modified front and rear axle locations. Doesn't say they're illegal. It just says they're going to check for them. They are mostly illegal. So you must use parts from a BSA kit. If you go to some of these online Pinewood Derby shops, you'll find all kinds of fancy speed axles that have been run through CNC and all kinds of fancy polishing. Those are illegal. You must start with one of the plain Jane nails that comes in a kit from a BSA kit, or a wheel tube from the scout shop. Those are the only things you can start with. Now it says modified front wheels. I'm sorry, modified wheels. There we go. Seems to imply you can't modify your wheels, but later on we'll find out it is legal. And you can't modify the front and rear axle locations. There's 2 slots in your block of wood. You have to put your nails in that. You can't widen them or shrink them any. Rules here are a little vague this year as to whether that's legal or not. It just says they'll check for it. Just keep in mind that block of wood has 2 cuts for the axles. That's where your axles have to go. So rule 1, car must be made in the current scout year. How they enforce that at the district and council level, I don't know. I know at the pack level, we'll see a car and say, you made that last year. The idea is the scout makes a new one every year. Pretty simple. Width of the car shall not exceed 2 3/4 inches. That's easy enough as long as it's mainly your decoration that you'll stick on the car or off the sides. If you put fenders, you got to make sure you stay within that limit. Same with the length of the car. 7 inches max from front to back. Easy enough again. If you add decorations, that's where you run afoul. Now, the most important part of building a winning Pinewood Derby car, the Scout Division, what we're going to be running at Council, you can have a max of 5 ounces. Now, if you remember from your science class, if you have a 1 pound weight and a feather in a vacuum, you drop them, they will hit the ground at the same time. So it's not the weight that is making your Pinewood Derby car go faster. You have your mass, your weight times your acceleration is going to be your momentum. So what we're doing in Pinewood Derby is we're basically fighting friction. Friction with the wheels between the track, the wheels between the axle, and a little bit of wind resistance coming down the track. So if you got 5 ounces of mass heading down that track, the effects of friction are going to be somewhat minimized over that length of the track. Now if you take one car, let's take the same car, no weight, just the wood, you probably won't make it down to the end of the track. But if you put the 5 ounces in it, you'll zip right past the finish line. Weight is key. And my tip to you is, with your house scale or the scale we have with the pack, come up to 5 ounces and just a little over. Just with a little tiny weight, little BB of something that you can pull off, if it's hot glued somewhere, because you don't know what scale you're going to be weighed against, and maybe theirs weighs a little bit less. You want to get all the way up to 5 ounces on the scale that's used at the race. So I always go a little bit over, knowing I'll have to pick something off. And in times past, I haven't had to take off that extra little weight of my son's car because their scale weighed a little bit differently than my scale. And I want to take advantage of as much of that weight as I can get on there legally. So that's the long and short of weight. Tungsten, probably the best weight. It's very expensive, but it's very dense. You don't have to place, like if you use pennies, your car is going to be covered in pennies. But tungsten, super dense. You just need a couple little areas you need to carve out in the bottom and put it in. But those are tips and tricks you can look up on the internet. Now here we go again. Only axles, wheels, and bodywood sold by BSA Scout Shops. Doesn't say Catalina BSA Scout Shop, so I would interpret this. Any scout shop, even scoutstuff.org, if they sell it, you can use it. But then again, it says any modifications to axles or wheels must be made using official BSA tools or equipment sold at the BSA shops. Now what's going to be missing here, I use a drill press. Just about everyone uses a drill press to take the burrs off their nails. This rule implies that's not legal. It is in fact legal. It's a little wordsmanship here. But any tool a scout shop, not just our scout shop, any scout shop sells is legal. So if there's a tool that allows a modification and you bought that tool at the scout shop, I would argue that modification is in fact legal. So what we're talking about here, there are ways to turn your wheels, to shave them off, to make sure they're perfectly round. In years past, it says you may lightly sand to take off burrs and what have you from the plastic, but the 2016 rules kind of say, hey, if we sell it, it's legal. Just want to point that out there. And again, number 6, I think for the third iteration, we say only official BSA wheels are acceptable. The Revell ones you'll find at Michael's, not acceptable. The Revell ones you get at Lowe's, not acceptable. They have to come from your kit, the 2 we talked about out above, or they're little tubes at the scout shop, multiple different colors. If you want green, you want blue, you want red, you can get those there, but they have to be BSA wheels. And I would argue not only do they have to be BSA wheels, they can't be professionally modified. There are websites you can spend tens, dozens, hundreds of dollars getting perfectly lathed wheels. Those, I would argue, are not legal because they're not using tools sold at the BSA shop. No one's going to go to that extreme, but it's just a little caveat there. And number 7, just here, you can't put anything between the wheel and the body of the car. So no washers, no bushings, no bearings. I would love to see if someone had a bearing small enough. They probably exist, but boy, would they be expensive. My advice to you is don't paint around that area where the hub of the wheel touches the body of the car. Put a little sticker there, and then after, when you're assembling your car, grind graphite into that area because the paint tends to be pretty tacky and you'll get a lot more friction there. And number 8, I have never seen a car run on any type of springs. I'm not sure how that would be an advantage. I would assume it would be compressing as you're coming down that part of the slope and you'd actually lose some momentum, but it is a rule, no springs. It cannot ride on springs of any type. I guess you could have springs as weight somewhere on the car as long as it is not a suspension. Number 9, no hubcaps of any type, and that's just so they can see the axle and make sure you're not using some kind of pro-designed axle. Number 10 is kind of a repeat of 2, 3, and possibly 4. Any decorations you use have to be within the weight and length, height. Well, there are no height limits, obviously. Taller the car, more wind resistance, but any of the width and length and weight limits previously set. So you can't have a 5-ounce car and then stick 8 ounces of G.I. Joes on top. That'll not be legal. Number 11, must be freewheeling, so there's no starting devices. You can't have a motor that is somehow activated. Magnets wouldn't work. If you had some kind of magnet for that starting post to pull you forward, I would argue that's illegal. Any kind of tape. Some councils have rules that you can't have tape so that that starting post pulls you forward. Number 12, no loose material. So what that means is if I take your Pinewood Derby car, I should be able to rotate it 360 degrees all around and nothing should fall off of it. So it's not like it's you glue a cup to the top and pour lead shot in there to get the weight. The idea here is when your car gets down to the end and it tips and tumbles, you don't lose all your weight all over the place. Lubrication. In years past, the rule used to be dry lube only, no liquid lubricants. Now it says only graphite or other lubricants sold by scout shops. Now you can get all kinds of different graphites from Home Depot or Lowe's or even scout shops online. I would even interpret if it says other lubricants sold by BSA scout shops. I would argue chapstick is legal because it's sold at the BSA scout shop. It lubricates your lips, but they're not very specific. But truly all you really want is graphite. Stick with that. Obviously no WD-40, no liquid Teflon, nothing that is wet at the time of the race. That's pretty much what most councils and most districts will enforce. They don't want all kinds of junk all over their car. And plus, a lot of these liquid lubricants will deteriorate the plastic wheels. It's going to be a detriment, and it's messy. So when you get to the race, you may lubricate and graphite up your car before inspection. But once you hand it over, once you go to the table and they weigh it in, check it in, you can't touch your car anymore. After that, it does its 4 races or more, and you never touch it again until they give it back to you. Now, at our pack race, if something were to happen, you lose a wheel, we'll probably let you try to shove it back on. But at the district races and the council race, if something bad happens to your car, for the most part, you're out of luck. But once you get to that level, your car is not going to be falling apart. I will point out that it says race judges, the registrars, inspectors have final word. I have seen over years, you have very good volunteers that love scouting, but they will interpret rules or apply rules from past years that aren't written. So I have seen it, and I have argued for people where someone says a car is not legal because of X, Y, and Z, but I will always pull out the rules and say, show me here, 1 through X, what rule do I violate? And if they can't articulate which rule you violate, I would argue that their ruling does not stand. But if you're going to push the envelope, you have to understand that you could get called out and disqualified. Now, that's not going to happen. That's a rarity, but I throw that out there. If your design, one I saw was a tank. Now, the overall from the barrel on the turret to the back of the tank was under 7 inches, but the guy at the check-in table said, nope, your barrel sticks beyond the front of your car. Nowhere in the rules does it say you can't have something stick out beyond the front of the car. Now, there are designs called a cheater bar where it sticks out so that you kind of get beyond that starting pin, that starting peg, so that you'll cross the finish line before all other cars. You kind of have an unfair advantage because your front of your car is sticking out in front. Now with the barrel of a tank, can you actually hit that tiny little sensor? That's a small little width to hit. But the rules do not say you can't do that. In years past they have, and a lot of councils are more explicit and descriptive on what is legal and what is not. But our council, these are the rules. Just, I'm kind of belaboring the point. If you're pressing the envelope, you may get disqualified. So it might help if you're doing something to ask ahead of time. There's a guy that will hold a little little clinic at the council shop about how to use the cars and what tools and what's legal and what's not. Run it by him. Have him tell you, that's going to violate the rules, whether written or not. You'll run into some issues. But I really think Pinewood Derby is one of the best parts of scouting. The kids get to build something, their own imagination. Obviously, adults have to run the saws because, the first rule of scouting is be safe. Everyone starts with 8 fingers, 2 thumbs, or a certain number of fingers and thumbs, and they should finish with that same number of fingers and thumbs. Painting is always problematic for boys with little hands, but we let them have fun, help them out. Dads, you'll find out. My little point is you can tell who built the car by who carries the car. So if the dad's carrying the car into the race, dad probably built that car. If the kid's carrying the car in and proud of it, he's probably the one who built that car. Just make sure little Johnny, little Joey doesn't race that car down the driveway and get it all beat up before the day of the race. And if you make the top 3 to move on to district, or the top 3 from district to move on to council, keep that car out of your son's hands just for that period of time, because you don't want to destroy it before you go on to the next race. It's a lot of fun. It's a big learning process.